Action. That's what we do. Okay, we take action. We want to take action after we hear our speakers tonight, because what they're going to be talking about is about something that impacts our society in a real important way. And we really truly need to do more than just talk about it. Once we learn and we acknowledge what's going on, then we need to move forward, and we need to take our white privilege to the next level by actually doing something to dismantle and unravel some of the systems, corrupt systems that we have in our society. So I'm not going to linger this anymore. We're so glad to have Michigan Liberation here tonight. They were here 2 years ago to talk about criminal justice reform. They've been doing a lot of amazing work in the time between last time and now, and so I'm so happy to introduce them. Come on up.
Good evening, everyone. How you all doing? Good. Thanks for having us back. So I just want to introduce myself, tell you a little bit about my story, my why I do the work, and then talk to you about what is Michigan Liberation and what we've been doing since we saw you last in 2019. So my name is Tim Christensen. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the training director at Michigan Liberation. And when we say training director, like you all, we're constantly learning, developing how it is we take action, build relationships in community, grow. That's central to our work. But I want to talk to you all about how I'm from Oakland County, I'm from the suburbs, how I became, an abolitionist organizer with Michigan Liberation. All right. I recently attended organizer training with a group called Isaiah, Minnesota. And the check-in question on the first day is, why did you say yes to organizing? Right? And I ask you all, as you listen to us speak tonight, why did I show up to this meeting? Why did I first start to take action? And I had to do some reflecting, even though I've been on 100 Zoom meetings and had a bunch of one-on-ones. Why did I say yes to organizing? And it brought me back to not far down the road from here in Wixom, Michigan, where we were knocking doors for the 2018 midterm. And I was someone who was introduced to organize it through Michigan United. I was an adult ESL teacher there. I was supporting organizing around immigrant rights when Donald Trump was trying to kick a lot of our community members out of this country, right? But I didn't think I figured out my why yet. And I was knocking doors in the Village Apartments in Wixom, not too far from here. And door after door, I met folks of many different races who had stories about how they'd been impacted by the criminal justice system, right? And it wasn't, what it was were stories that were familiar to me. I've got a family member who is still paying off their drug tether. I had a nephew or a niece who got in trouble in school, and their life's never been the same. And it didn't take me to that part. A lot of us, especially white folks, we take ourselves out of the problem. But I realized I'm impacted. I have family and friends I care about who've been criminalized for substance use and mental health. Right? I was mad when I was 16 in high school watching my friends of color get suspended and expelled for the same things I was doing, the same young kid behavior. And I realized I have a stake in this, right? And thanks to Michigan Liberation, thanks to folks who trained me, right, like your leaders, like I got an opportunity to organize, right? And so since 2019, I came to groups like you all, and I was walking around with Earl and Julia and Shelley and James saying, we need a new prosecutor in Oakland County. That wasn't the conversations we were having around the political table, really, right? But we were walking around to churches, to Indivisibles, to groups saying we need a new prosecutor in Oakland County because of cash bail, because of Oakland County had some of the most juvenile lifers sentenced to life without parole in the state, because our prosecutor didn't believe in alternatives to incarceration for drug users, because didn't think that wrongful convictions happen in Oakland County. We say when we organize, we win. We replaced that prosecutor through day in, day out organizing there, and since then have had 21 of 23 juvenile lifers sentenced to a term of years. We have a first conviction integrity unit in Oakland County. Cash bail is not being sought on low-level defenders anymore. We believe when we organize, when we push the issue, even here in Oakland County, even in Milford, we win. Leave no stone unturned, right? So that's a little bit about us. What else have we been, and about myself? And I'll be honest, now I'm hooked. What's next? What's next, right? Where do we win? What do we need to win? Is it this redistricting fight? Is it cash bail, right? What's next? That's a question, because when you have a win, like you all had with gerrymandering in 2018, it gets in your bones. That's what I think. So I'm really excited to introduce in a second my team, who's going to tell you what they're trying to win, what they're building statewide. But real quickly, Michigan Liberation is a statewide 501c4 grassroots power building organization who believes in the leadership development of those who have been directly impacted by the criminal justice system. And we do that in the creation of campaigns to end mass incarceration. Since then, we have taken on prosecutors in 4 counties. We supported the BLM protests, the protests in support against the murder of George Floyd in Detroit, bailed out, met dozens of folks who were arrested in those protests, and made sure folks knew their rights, and so much more, you all. But you'll hear about it from my teammates. Thanks for having us again. I'm gonna invite Ash to the mic.
So as Tim introduced, my name is Ashley Daniels. I prefer to go by Ash. My pronouns are she, her, they, them, and sunshine. And I'm one of the Wayne County organizers with Michigan Liberation. And I'm also one of the organizers around our Care Not Criminalization campaign. And as Tim mentioned, one of the things, Michigan Liberation has been working towards ending mass incarceration and the criminalization of poverty, mental health, substance use since our inception in 2018. We are an organization of directly impacted individuals who use our platform to uplift the voices of the underserved population. And so one of the campaigns that myself is currently working on, myself, Tim, and Anthony, is a campaign called Care Not Criminalization. And that is a campaign that's working towards ending the incarceration of mental health and substance use. And we know that most people who tend to use substances have some form of undiagnosed mental illness. It's always been taboo to talk about what is quote unquote wrong with you. So we're working towards changing that stigma and opening up that dialect. And so over the last 8 months or so, since the beginning of this year, we've been talking to folks in our community, having personal conversations, gathering folks in rooms just like this or on Zoom just like this, so we can have listening sessions and talk about, okay, have you been criminalized with mental illness? Or, have you been criminalized for using substances to self-medicate or to help get rid of pain, or just for beneficial use as well, because that is a thing that exists. And what we have done, which I will bring Anthony up to talk about momentarily, is build out a platform and an agenda and build out the demands from folks in the community on what they would like to see changed. And how we kind of got there, as I said, was the listening sessions. It all started back in 2019. Our inception was 2018, but we were mainly on the doors and trying to figure out what are the issues. In 2019, from those folks who we spoke to on the door, we went and did the same thing, had personal conversations, listening sessions, and we built out an agenda based off of, just all the issues we hear in the criminal justice system. And Care Not Criminalization is just one of those things that we decided to work on and build more broader. And so just a little bit about myself and where my stake comes in. Growing up, I'm the youngest of 6. I'm baby girl. 3 older brothers, 2 older sisters. Didn't really grow up with my older sisters in the household. They were Well, they were adults by the time I was born. One of my brothers throughout his life used to always find himself, there's a running joke with my parents, like when my brother was younger, he used to always find the strays, as in people, animals, whatever, and bring them home so he could help them. So that shows you kind, caring, loving individual, right? But also, throughout growing up, he was always getting into altercations, physical and or verbal, with our father. And sometimes those altercations would come to the police being called. And with the police being called, many things will happen. You know, it's already traumatizing for myself as a 4-year-old, seeing these people come in the house, seeing my brother and my father fighting physically or verbally, you know, and there were a few of those times where my brother was taken away in handcuffs. And as a child, I just know my brother's missing. I don't know where my brother is, which in turn caused me to act out. My brother and I are very, very close. Throughout pretty much my whole life, even up until recently, these things have happened. So he's been in and out of incarceration. It wasn't until he was 25, and he's 4 years older than myself, where he finally got diagnosed with being manic depressive and bipolarism. But at that point, he has already been in and out the carceral system. His name has already been tarnished, even just for small offenses like unpaid tickets, because it was hard for him to keep a steady job, you know? And even just the fact that it took that long for him to be diagnosed. Also growing up, my abuela, my grandmother, suffered from Alzheimer's. That's how she passed away. And I used to care for her. So I used to always have this thing about people who were kind of mentally different. And just within the last week, I found out that myself, I'm what you call neurodivergent, which is on, or some may say like the autism spectrum, but it's more than just autism. And so I have a stake in this because that's something in my heart that I believe, you know, if my brother was able to have that intervention that he needed to be able to get the help that he needed as he was younger and a child, you know, maybe he wouldn't have ended up in and out the carceral system. Maybe he wouldn't have ended up in and out of treatment centers that just turned him away from a child. Even in adulthood, they were overcapacitated. And these things are issues and problems. And we believe that caring for individuals and treatment of the mind is just as important of ailments in the body. You know, we go to the doctor when we have an ache in our bones or if we're feeling sick, but for whatever reason, it's so taboo if you're feeling off or just mentally unwell to go see a doctor who specializes in that. So we do believe that ailments of the mind are just as important to be treated as ailments of the body. We also believe that people should not be punished for being ill. There is no way you can get well in a cell. There's even studies that show that the longer you are in a 6x6 or whatever the footage is place, you know, the more your mind diminishes. If you had something like Alzheimer's or dementia, you actually worsen quicker being confined. You cannot get well in a cell. We believe in harm reduction. Is anyone here familiar with what harm reduction is? No? Okay. Well, harm reduction is where we try to destigmatize things such as use and overdose, or allowing people to have safe consumption sites. There's some things such as a syringe exchange program where folks can go and to exchange their dirty needles for cleaner ones, to where, you know, now they're not putting themselves at a higher risk for things like hepatitis C, HIV, or et cetera, et cetera. But it's not just to enable, in essence, these people to utilize substances. They also have doctors there. They have therapists there. You can go get checked out without having to worry about, oh, they're gonna run my blood and drugs are gonna come up and now they're gonna look at me and stigmatize me. So it's just a safe place for people who use substances. And harm reduction is just all around that destigmatization, Because as I said, most people who tend to use substances have some form of undiagnosed mental health issues, and they use those substances to self-medicate. So, it's helpful for these people to find resources. But again, we believe in harm reduction because incarceration and punitive practices have not worked. But in actuality, they have caused more harm to people who need healing, to people and their family who need healing. And it just perpetuates the quote that hurt people hurt people. We need to destigmatize our language and communities around mental wellness and substance use, because otherwise we will have more people feeling isolated. We will have more overdoses because people just don't have anyone to talk to. And yeah, we will have all of that as long as there's stigma. And alongside, regardless of who a person is or what they're going through, all people, all human beings deserve dignity and respect. That's all anyone wants at a very basic human level. So we should be able to provide that because that is a caring thing to do, showing love and care to people. And they might just make different decisions. You never know what your smile or a simple, hey, how are you really feeling can change somebody's whole outlook and output. So again, over the last 8 months or so, we've been gathering people in our community, and we came up with a list of demands that's in process of design. And I'm gonna pass it over to Anthony to introduce himself and talk to you all a little bit about that agenda.
You have to excuse me, I'm a little taller than all of them, so how is everyone? And please forgive me that because, hair gets in my eye, so I have to move it. So I know he can understand what I'm talking about. Okay, you get it. Listen, I'm sorry. My name is Anthony Boyd. I'm a program manager and a community organizer for Michigan Liberation. And who's here has been either directly or indirectly impacted by either the criminal justice system, substance use, or mental health issues? Wow. I think we're all related. Seriously, we're family. And that is one of the reasons why we're now working with an organization called Vital Strategies, and we came up with the project Care Not Criminalization, because we actually believe that people who have suffered indirectly or directly from these particular issues need care, and they don't need to be criminalized for mental illness or substance use. Who wants that? I mean, who does that serve when you put someone in prison because they can't help themselves for whatever it is they did? Now, I'm not suggesting that there should not be some type of accountability. See, that's why I'm the Robin, she's the Batman. So, yeah, I'm not saying there should not be any accountability, but I am saying we should look at, I've learned to do this. I've learned to look and ask when I talk to people, instead of looking at them and saying to myself, what did they do? I now look at people and I ask myself, what have they been through? Because then, once I know what they've been through, I can pretty much relate to why they're doing, if not totally, at least somewhat, why they do what they do. So this is the list of demands we put together by having these listening sessions and these research meetings that we had for the last 8 months. I mean, we put a lot of work into it, and we really want you all to hear what we've done and possibly get involved yourself. So one of the things we did was we wanted to prioritize, again, care not criminalization in our school and educational system. And how we wanted to do that, what we came up with is we really, especially in Detroit, major big city, we decided we did not want any more police in the schools. Because I am a public school graduate, and fortunately for me, I know I'm believe it or not, I'm 60. And when I was in school, we didn't have police. But we did. We had police come in and they would sing songs and tell us how great they were. And I believed them until later on. But anyway, so we, because we believe that their presence in school, especially when they're around kids of color, children of color, it does not serve them well. And they present a stigma to these children that is hard for these children to overcome. And oftentimes, while their presence is more harmful, does more harm than good, and they are not really trying to help, because I mentor in some of the schools, and their presence is more shocking even to me. So we want to send a message that mental health issues and substance use are a criminal issue, are a criminal issue and not a, but that's crazy. They are a health issue and not a criminal issue. One of the other things we wanted to do, we believe that we need more people in the schools that children can go and talk to, that can give them proper direction and hear what they have to say. And that's another thing that in mentoring children and coaching children and talking to children who have never had anyone to sit down with them and just ask them, what do you need? Some children have never even been hugged properly without feeling like the person who's hugging them is doing something wrong to them. So we spend a lot of time really focusing in on and talking to children as well. And we believe in order to increase the effectiveness of guidance counselors need to have a smaller guidance counselor to student ratio. Because some of the guidance counselors that I've been in contact with or have experienced, their whole list of students is like ridiculous. It is more, one person to maybe, I can't even begin to tell you how many people are on their caseloads that they have to help and find themselves trying not to burn themselves out. And that's another thing that we go through too, because trauma is real, people, trauma is real. Another one of the things that we wanted to, that's on our list, is harm reduction and mental health for K through 12. As Ashley explained to you what harm reduction is, we want to definitely destigmatize our language. We want to let children know that it is okay to use certain language that is not harmful to their mental well-being. And unfortunately, they don't get that all the time. We need early education on mental wellness and harm reduction, because it would help destigmatize ours and others' perceptions of substance use and mental health, wellness. I'm experiencing children now that I talk to that at a very young age, as young as 3 and 4, that are ashamed of so many things that I was never ashamed of when I was small. And that's crazy to me, because they're being introduced to things I was never privy to as a child. And how do we combat that if we don't work together to see to it that they get everything that they need? Now I really believe that the children are our future. And how do we help them to the best of our ability to become the best human beings that they can be? And that's what I asked all of you. How do we help them? What do we do? Because I think that they are truly our responsibility, all of ours. Your children are my children, because if I seen them, I would want to help them. Because I am a good person. Thank you, Earl. I'm gonna give you that $5 in a minute. Thank you for that. So, another thing we want to do is end suspension and expulsion. That in and of itself to me is just totally crazy, to be suspended or expelled for something, for a minor infraction, and the people that do it seemingly do not care about how it affects you in your life going forward. We believe that suspension and expulsion doesn't correct the issue at all. We believe that it is a punitive practice that creates an isolation and stigma between children, adults, and peers. Has anyone in here during their time in school, and I know all of you are only about 25, 26, so just think back about 5 or 6 years. Have any of you ever been expelled or almost expelled? Wow. How did it feel?
Whoa.
Now, how do you do that to children and then not tell them that they're good people? I don't understand that, because you let a child go through life believing he or she is worthless. You punish them, never tell them why you're punishing them, and you never do anything to correct the behavior outside of punishment. That's ridiculous to me. That's crazy. We also want to implement care, not criminalization. If you notice, we continue to use that term, care. We continue to stress that because we want people to understand we care more about caring for you than trying to criminalize you for your substance use or mental health issues. Because you should not be at fault for something or things that you cannot control or you have no control over. We prioritize care, not criminalization in our courts. Tim spoke about it briefly, Ash did too. We want to end cash bail. Show of hands. How many people here, I know you know about cash bail, Earl, but how many people here has ever had to bail someone out? You and I must be neighbors or something, because I like that. Can you imagine sitting in jail, waiting to leave on a $100 bond, and you can't pay it? That, to me, would be the most devastating feeling in the world, to know that I have to sit here because I can't provide somewhat of a basic need to get out of a situation that I probably, if there were a diversion program or another thing that I could have done before I even came here, I probably could have avoided this altogether. But they put you there and then do nothing to help you to get out. And then if you're able to provide that bail for yourself or someone in your family, look at all the things it cost you. Sometimes your job, sometimes even problems with your family, because they're like, we don't have it either. But we're trying to come up with it so we can get you out, and it just creates problems across the board. Another thing that we want to do is look at the drug testing and court fees, which are ridiculous. You put me in prison, you put me in jail, you make me pay for it, you make me pay for my drug testing, you make me pay for my stay in jail, and then when I finally get out and I've lost my job, you want to put me back in jail. Please, someone tell me, help me make sense of something that makes absolutely no sense to me. So again, we believe that the fees further criminalize poor people. A lot of people cannot afford to pay these fees, which will land them back in jail. $100. We had someone, Tim, if I remember, that they couldn't get out for, what was it? Was it $100? $1. And could not get out on bail. Can you say it louder? Thank you. Thank you. Because it is. We also want to We also, one of the other things on our list is we want to demand that they start offering peer support. And I'm not going to go through the whole list. I'm just going to go through this so someone else can speak. But we want to offer peer support. Because oftentimes what we find is that people who've experienced what we're going through, we believe can better understand what it's like. Now, that doesn't mean that people who haven't been through it can't recognize your pain, your struggle, your hurt. But we know for a fact that they have not walked in your shoes. They can be sympathetic to your journey, but they can't really be empathetic because they have not walked in your shoes. And that, for me, is extremely important. And how I came to this and why I'm so passionate about doing this is I started with Michigan Liberation maybe about almost 18 months ago. I started out as a part-time person in our communications department. I'll be honest, I knew nothing about communication at all. I knew absolutely nothing. But when they heard my story, they thought I would make a good addition to the team. I'm glad that they did, not just because they pay me so well. Hint, Tim, hint. But I really wanted to make a difference because in total transparency, as much as I am a father, a grandfather, a business owner, I've done a mentor, a life coach, and a whole slew of other wonderful things. I've also been directly impacted by the criminal justice system. I spent 23 years in prison. I've been out almost 3 years now, and I cannot begin to tell you how difficult it has been since I've been out. There's not a day that goes past that I'm not in total fear or in fight, flight, or freeze mode. I don't relax at all. Not at all. Prison didn't traumatize me. Prison only exacerbated the trauma I took into prison with me. I will admit I have run across some of the most beautiful people in the world who wants to do nothing like you all, who wants, not that you don't want to do nothing, you're beautiful people who want to help. And that's what we need more of. We need more people to say, you know what? What can I do? How can I get involved? And how can I help? What part can I play in this? And I think you are starting to now realize the part that you all can play. And I'm hoping that you will, because we need you. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Earl. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having us back. I was here in 2019. You all really made us feel welcome, and we're happy that you asked us back again. My name is Earl. I'm a relational organizer with Michigan Liberation. I, too, have been directly impacted by the criminal justice system, along with Anthony. I was there with him 28 years. As a matter of fact, I brought Anthony into the organization because he was one of the people that I knew would be beneficial to our organization. You know, not all of us that went in there are stigmatized with, that's why we changed the language when we refer to ourselves. We no longer consider ourselves as ex-convicts or any of those negative connotations. We prefer returning citizens or formerly incarcerated. I'm here to talk to you about the End Cash Bail campaign that I'm running. But before we get started, some of you all had graciously decided that you all would participate in my presentation. So we have a skit that we're going to do, and I'm going to ask the players in our skit to come up and read their parts right now. Thank you.
Imagine, if you will, being a single mother. Raise your hand. Okay. This is Laverne. She's on her way to work to support her family. And you notice a red and blue lights behind you that are pulling you over. You've gotten a ticket in the past for a minor traffic offense a while back, but you weren't able to pay for it. Unbeknownst to you, that caused your license to expire, to be suspended. And this is where Laverne's story begins.
I know the rent is due. I get paid on Friday, and I can pay it then. Okay, see you Friday.
Later that day, while driving,
Damn, what is he stopping me for? Now I'm going to be late for work.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Do you know that your brake light is not working?
No, I didn't, but I'm running late for work. Can I get it fixed later?
Do you have your license and registration?
Yes, here it is.
I'll be right back.
after a few minutes,
Step out of the car, please.
What's the problem, officer?
I'm afraid that your license is suspended. I'm going to have to take you in. Put your hands behind your back.
Laverne is taken to Macomb County Jail after being arrested by the Warren police. She is processed at the jail, and at her arraignment the next day, the judge sets bail for $500. Her next court date isn't for 4 weeks, and unless she can pay her bail, she has to remain in jail until then. Eventually, Laverne was able to have access to the phone, but couldn't get through to anyone because she had no money in her account. Later that evening, her sister, who had been watching her 2 young children, learned that Laverne was in the Macomb County Jail and called them directly. The sister had been living with Laverne and was taking care of the kids while Laverne worked at Taco Bell. She did not have $500 of disposable income as their money is spent on food, bills, and rent. The sister, sadly, had to tell Laverne that she would not be able to pick her up that day. 4 weeks later, the sister comes and picks Laverne up after she is discharged at 11:30 p.m.
What took so damn long? Thank God you're out.
I need a shower and to see my kids. Where's my car?
Your car was impounded and we can't afford to get it out. I had to borrow Dre's car. We got to get it back to him because he works the late shift.
Did Alec from Taco Bell get a hold of you? I missed days of work and had no PTO left to use. If I lose this job, we won't be able to pay your bills.
All this for driving on a suspended license. What the hell? How is anyone supposed to make it day to day?
All I know is I got pulled over driving to work, was late paying a ticket, lost my license, got arrested, lost my job, can't find my car, and could lose the roof over me and my kids' head. Something has got to change.
Give a hand for our players who did an excellent job. And I have some questions to ask. This is called participation. And one of the questions I want to ask is, what did Laverne lose because of the cash bail system? Anybody?
Her job, everything, pretty much. Yeah.
She lost her job,
Her house,
her car.
A month with your kids.
That is correct. Okay. So, how did this have a ripple effect and impact on other people in the community?
well, her sister was her life kind of came to a halt because she had to take care of the children. But that ripple effect in the community of having a person who, she lost the job, so there was a job that was not being done there. But it really just brings down the entire feeling of a community to think that a person was taken away from their life and their family and their children for such an extended period of time.
That is exactly right, Sherry. So I have one more question that I want to ask. It's, what could have intervened? And I have 4 choices. A bail bondsman. 2, the Bail Project or Michigan Liberation, because we do go bail people out that can't afford to pay their bail. Hit the lotto, C, or end cash bail, D. Which one do you all think? Anyone? End cash bail, that would be it. So that is the campaign that we're working on. I'd like to tell you a little bit about how we started this End Cash Bail campaign. We started with the Mother's Day bailout, in which we were bailing out single mothers to reunite them with their family. You know, from that, we developed a court watch program. And with that court watch program, we started going into court to watch to see some of the people that we had bailed out. We were going with them in the beginning. But we were absolutely shocked by some of the things that we saw when we went into these different jurisdictions. One in particular, a suburb that sits on the border with Detroit, and they sit along 8 Mile, which is a major thoroughfare that people use to go back and forth to work. They target older model cars because they figure they don't have the insurance or whatever, you know. And they were targeting people from Detroit, I would say. It's that systemic racism. And this community was less than 10% black. But while we were court watching, 80% of the people that went in front of the bench were people from Detroit or people of color. So we just thought that that was so ridiculous. So we decided we'd do our End Cash Bail campaign, which is what we're doing now. Now, you all will notice the folders that's on your chairs and whatnot. Inside each of those folders are 10 beautifully designed postcards. You know, Julia's not here, but I'm going to give her a shout out because those postcards are her design. Each one of those postcards are already stamped, and we're suggesting that we have a template in there with the names and addresses of the legislators who we're targeting, that we want to urge to move on the pending legislation to end cash bail. So we're asking for your help in filling these postcards out. Actually, we know that you all have experience filling out postcards. We see the postcards that you all have. So we're hoping that you all can have like maybe a postcard party, dump all these postcards on these legislators, let them know how we feel about the hurt and the harm and trauma that the cash bail is causing. Now, a lot of you all may not experience that because I'm not sure how it works out here. But down around the city of Detroit, I mean, this jurisdiction that I was talking about made over $3 million a year in fines. And that was well over 25% of their annual budget. So we know that, you know, it was a speed trap or it was whatever, you know, and it's causing hurt and harm to the people in our community. And we don't think that cash bail, the purpose of cash bail is supposedly to ensure someone's return to court. Well, it costs so much more to incarcerate somebody than it would cost to like a simple reminder of you have a court date coming up, a text or something. Well, the pushback might be, well, you know, not everyone has a phone. Well, my thinking would be if they can't afford a phone, how do you expect them to pay a bill, you know? So that's our End Cash Bail campaign. We're asking you all to join us in filling out these postcards, have a postcard writing campaign. And now I want to tell you a little bit about myself and how I became involved in Michigan Liberation. Michigan Liberation formed in September of 2018. I was released after serving 28 years in prison on August the 7th, 2018. Had never seen a cell phone in my life, did not know how to use one. My brother got me one. He called the number, it was ringing. He was like, slide it over, slide it over. He was talking about the bar on the bottom of the phone. Of course, I had no idea, so naturally I put the phone on the floor and slid it to him. You know, that was what I knew about, you know, technology, cell phones and whatnot. Well, after learning how to use that cell phone, I did like a lot of other people. I got on Facebook and I saw a flyer. And the flyer was for an organization that we're in coalition with, but it wasn't this organization. But that wasn't what got my attention because I didn't know anything about nonprofits. I didn't know anything about, you know, building power, community organizations, criminal justice reform. I didn't know any of that. What got my attention was the address to where they were having this meeting at. It was 901 Melbourne, which is a historic black church in the black community in Detroit on the north end, which also happens to be the church that I was raised in, the church that my father had pastored for 50 years, and the last place that I had been prior to my incarceration, because I went there, he had an office. I wanted to tell him what had happened so that he could break the news to my mother so she wouldn't have to find out about it by watching the news. Well, out of curiosity in going to that place, there were a lot of different groups there. There was Nation Outside, Youth Justice Fund, We the People, so many different organizations. And like I said, this organization was just forming. Well, I was getting ready to leave, and I had talked to a bunch of people, and I was kind of amazed that these type of organizations even existed. And I was leaving, this woman, her name's Alicia Johnson, she was our executive co-director at the time. She asked, could she speak to me? Well, full transparency, I'm almost 30 years in prison, and a good-looking woman comes up saying, can they speak to me? Yeah. So she told me, invited me to one of Michigan Liberation's meetings where I met Tim, Julia, and Ray, Nick, and I think it was just you four, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was just you four at the very beginning. And I went, and they were having a one-on-one with me. And I was thinking, what the hell are these people talking about? Because I didn't know anything about it. But then after having these one-on-ones with them, I was like, damn, that makes sense. Because I could relate to a lot of what they were saying. So as you say, the rest is history. They invited me to join the organization. And now here I am, formally incarcerated, and I'm the relational organizer for a major grassroots organization now, and I'm bottom lining this End Cash Bill campaign. We're also having a direct action on October the 27th. A direct action is where we gather and we call attention to whatever the issue is. We had a direct action when, I don't know how many of you all heard about Grace, the 15-year-old girl that was incarcerated for failing to do her homework online. Well, within 48 hours, Michigan Liberation put together a car caravan in which we had 250 cars drive from Birmingham Groves High School to the courthouse. We had another 300 people already at the courthouse. Our protest was covered by every major network that there is, including CNN and the BBC from England. Tim was interviewed by BBC, so we got the word out, and that was one of the things that made us decide this prosecutor has got to go. So what we did was we had that protest against that, and then we also had another protest during the killing of George Floyd. There was an incident that happened right here. We didn't have to go to Minnesota. We didn't have to go to Georgia. This stuff was happening in our backyard. We had a young man that was held down by the police. His name was Mackenzie Cochran. His last words were, "I can't breathe." And the prosecutor at the time felt like the officers that held him down and took his life, there was no criminality involved. After our protests, and we spoke to Mackenzie Cochran's brother, Michael, and they were extremely close. And I mean, that was a heart-wrenching conversation that we had with him. And he was saying that his mother called him and told him to turn on the TV because they were talking about George Floyd, but they thought that they were talking about their brother. It was the exact same circumstances. So we got behind that. We've had a rally behind that. The next day, after the prosecutor had said that she didn't believe that there was criminality involved, they turned it over to the Attorney General's office to take a look in the reopening of that investigation. So like Tim said, we've done a lot of good things since we were here last, and we're going to continue to work hard. We'll be going to Lansing tomorrow to talk to certain of our state representatives and state senators. We're going to talk about our legislative issues, and we're also going to be pushing End Cash Bill, because that is a campaign that we absolutely want to see ended. The story that you heard, the skit, even though that was fictitious, it was based on a true story of someone we had bailed out. Another story that I like to share about the end of the cash bill was when we first started the Mother's Day bailout. The first night that we went, the first day that we went, rather, we were excited, anxious. It's our first day going. We got to the jail early. We got there at 9 o'clock in the morning. 11 hours later, 8 o'clock that evening, because going to bail somebody out, those of you that have done it, know it's not like going paying for your grocery and leaving. You know, it's traumatic, you know. Sometimes you have to wait hours, and then there are other fines and fees that have to be paid or whatnot. Well, we had been there since 9 o'clock in the morning, and it was 8 o'clock in the evening, and we were exhausted and ready to go. And we were pulling out of the parking lot. We got a phone call. It was from another young mother. She wasn't one of the ones that we went to bail out, but she had got our number from one of the young mothers that we had bailed out, and she wanted to know, could we help her? Well, like I said, we were tired and exhausted, but we didn't want to turn her down. But without making any promises, what we told her was, give us your family contact information. We'll call and we'll see what it is we could do. Well, we called her mother. Her mother was at work at the time that we called her. She said that she would love to be able to help her daughter, but she didn't have any money to help pay the bond. Her brother had just been killed the day before, and they were trying to raise the money to pay for his funeral. But she said she was going on her lunch break in 10 minutes and asked us if we could stay there and meet her. So we decided, what's 10 more minutes? So we decided we'd wait, and her mother took her lunch break. She came to the jail, and she gave us a $20 bill because that was all she could afford to do. I mean, just that in itself moved us so much, we decided to turn that car around, drive back to the jail, pay the $500 bond, wait for that woman to get out, and make sure she got home safely. And we saw the harm and whatnot that was being caused by doing this, and that's why we're so dedicated to this End Cash Bail campaign. I was at a thing that Indivisible Huron Valley gave, where we were talking to you all state representative. He was taking questions and whatnot, and so I asked him a question. He didn't answer my question. What he asked me was, do you live in the district? Well, I didn't want to push back and say, you just had a dozen people ask you questions. You didn't ask any of them where they lived at. Why are you asking me where I live at? Well, I knew the obvious answer, but I let that go. But you know, he said that he would recuse himself on voting on any legislation, but we know that he may not vote on it, but he's going to be talking to his constituents and friends and whatnot to try to get them to keep cash bail where it is. Well, we're going to do our best when we go to Lansing tomorrow to push this campaign about ending cash bail. And that's where you all can play a part. You all can help us with these postcard packets that we gave out. Have a postcard writing party, because we know you all know how to write postcards. We see you were doing it before we got here. And we're having a direct action on the 27th in front of the Wayne County Jail. And we would invite any of you all to come. There's a flyer. I sent a copy of the flyer to Sherry. I'm pretty sure she'll share it with you. We'll welcome any of your attendants there to support us in our efforts to end cash bail. So now we're going to open this up to questions. Ashley.
What I'm going to be talking about, as you heard, just a couple of our campaigns. There are many. We want to talk about how you can get involved. So as I talk about what we have going on, we will be passing a sign-up sheet out. And in this last section, just write down whatever issue it is that you relate to. So I'm going to pass this to Quentin, who is also one of our MyLive members. So some things that we have going on is on Saturdays, we have a Care Not Criminalization core team, which is what myself and Anthony talked about. We also have a municipal Get Out the Vote core team, because we all know voting is very important, and that's how things get changed. As Earl mentioned, there's postcard parties. You could throw one of your own, or come to one of ours. Also, along with phone banking to reps and cash bail. We have the cash bail action that Earl talked about on the 27th, which is outside the Wayne County Jail, Division 1. Well, and 2, because it's right there on the same block. We have a Navigator watch party / graduation. which is real briefly, we had trained some folks up to help us to create and get out and organize folks. And so after election, we are gonna have a watch party for the results and also a graduation for their hard work and dedication to help come up with this agenda. And lastly, if you all are interested, you all have a toxic state rep, and we want to work with you all to get him the hell out. Put that in the issues, and then we could organize that for you, because when we organize, we win. So yeah, if you'd like to be involved, please sign up. And with that, we would love to open it up to the floor for you all for questions and answers for us. It could either be direct or, open.
Who sets the bail? And do they have guidelines? I mean, you folks are talking about bail anywhere from $1 to $500. We hear, things for very, very serious crimes, where they set them at $1 million that somebody has committed murder or whatever. But who sets the bail, and is there a chart that the court uses?
That's strictly up to the judge. The judge that hears it sets the bail. Now, we want to say, we understand that there are some people that do some things that will not be bailed out. We're not saying, but we're talking about for the low-level offenses, for the people that are in there specifically because they cannot afford to pay their bail, people that had their license suspended and whatnot. The judge sets those. Now, the prosecutor in Oakland County has said that she's no longer going to arrest people for those low-level offenses. Therefore, they won't need to pay bail. But there's other jurisdictions that don't fall up under her purview. The district courts, they're like their own personal little fiefdoms, So the judges in those district courts, let me tell you a quick story about the judge in the jurisdiction where I said we were court watching in. We did a presentation before the Oakland County Board of Commissioners. When they heard our statistics, they were so shocked. They thanked us for the presentation. They told us they knew that this went on, but they had no idea that it was this rampant. And I also sit on the board of the Community Corrections in Oakland County. I went to the Community Corrections Board meeting a couple of days later, and the director there made kind of a joke, like, you all should have heard Michigan Liberation's presentation. I'm surprised the DOJ didn't get involved. Well, the DOJ didn't get involved, but the state court administrator's office called and asked for our statistics. They were going to look into it. Judge Gettert was his name. When he found out about it, he retired that night for medical reasons, But when we fight, we win.
Just two other questions. Somebody pays the bail. What happens to that bail when the person shows up in court? Like, the bail is really to bring them back to court, okay, and be addressed. So what happens to that money?
Well, if you show back up at court, they will return the bill to the person that paid it.
All of it? Minus
the fees and whatnot.
Okay.
Because there's always costs and fees associated with it.
And then the last question.
Yeah, you got
it. Before you ask your last question, I just want to add a real life thing, real note. So we're currently in the process of getting and receiving some of our bailout money that we spent, minus the fees and stuff. But in Wayne County, we're actually going back and forth with the county clerk because it was we got a bond amount back for $90. We got one back for $250, but we're currently fighting for one for $2,500. Actually, it was one for $2,500 and another $500 one for the specific person. And they claimed they sent the check out in the mail twice. It never came. And then also when we sent the affidavit to, for a lost check, they returned it back to us. And this is an affidavit that they printed, wrote out, filled out, stamped, everything. I just had to sign and notarize. They sent it back to us saying, oh, this person is no longer treasurer. They haven't been treasurer for 6 years. So this document is null and void. So most people don't even know they can get their money back. So if the state can, they're going to hold on to it. So just to add that.
The only other question I have is I believe there's a prosecutor in Washington, Ann Arbor, where he was elected and he said he was getting rid of cash bail. Have you had any indication of how that's affected his jurisdiction?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, he did say that they were going to eliminate cash bail, but I'm pretty sure that, he's had a second look at it, and it's for low-level offenses. Because right after he did that, there was an incident where a guy was out on a low bail, and he had shot a 6-year-old. So he had to petition the court to take him back and raise his bond. So what we're talking about, we're not talking about those extraneous cases where, someone has done something horrific and they need to be in there. And that sounds strange coming from a person like myself, but I was around a lot of people that actually needed to be in there. We're talking about the people such as yourselves, that might get pulled over for a faulty brake light, We have what's called brake light clinics, where we fix people's brake lights for free because we know that's one of the pretexts that the police use to pull people over. As a matter of fact, the first brake light clinic that we were having it on DeQuinder and 8 Mile. It's where all 3 counties intersect. 8 Mile is the border between Wayne County, Oakland County, and Macomb County. Everything to the west of DeQuinder is Oakland. Everything to the right of DeQuinder on the other side of 8 Mile is Macomb, and everything south is Detroit. Well, we were having the brake light clinic right there on that corner where the 3 counties converge, and we had a woman coming into the clinic to get her brake lights fixed and was pulled over on her way into the brake light clinic. So, yeah.
And the police... In this instance, the police knew what we were out there doing. And also during that, we were able to, out of maybe spending about $1,000, we were able to take over $50,000 from the state by helping these people. Because if we weren't there to help them, they would have got a $500 ticket or if they couldn't pay it, go to court and have to pay bond. And so one thing that we also believe is, and you don't need to carry a gun, carry a screwdriver, and don't write these tickets for people. Help people learn how to change their brake light. Change it for them. It's only 50 cents to $1 for a brake light. And if somebody can't afford that, help them care. But yeah, are there any other questions?
Real quick, what does a bail bondsman do? What is their job? How does that whole operate? Because that's who we're talking about.
The bail bondsman takes advantage of people that's in a situation. That's my definition of what a bail bondsman does. He takes advantage of people that's in a situation. If I have a $10,000 bond and I can't pay it, he'll say, give him $1,000. He'll put up the other $9,000, which he doesn't actually have to put it in because they're licensed bail bondsmen and they can just give their word or a surety or whatnot. And you're paying them $1,000, and we don't believe anybody should profit off of somebody's incarceration. You might have heard us mention that Laverne got access to the phone but couldn't use it because the cost of a phone call in the county jails and prisons is so exorbitant you wouldn't believe it. The last time that I used the phone in prison, the rates were like $8 and something for a 15-minute call, And no one in prison can afford that because, I had the highest paying job that they have. I was a legal writer, and I made $3.34 a day. So that means I had to work 2.5 days if I wanted to make a phone call for 15 minutes,
And just to add on briefly what a bail bondsman does, so when they go in there, as Earl said, you could give them $1,000 and they'll put up or at least sign their name to say they have the rest. But, oh no, it's not just that $1,000 you have to put up. Let me sign your car over to me for collateral in case they don't show up in court. Sign your house over to me in collateral in case they don't come up to court because somebody's going to have to pay this, even though they're not paying it. So, bond and bail is supposed to mean to ensure release. Most people can't afford it. They can't ensure their release, but the statistics show that whether a bond was paid or not, people are inherently good. They want to do the right thing. They come to court with or without that bond paying. So keeping people in jail because they can't pay their bond and they want to ensure they go to court, best believe if you let that person go home, see their family, keep their job, keep their car, keep their house, they will go to court.
thoughts are on bail for parents that are in arrears for child support. So that bail usually goes to the parent, right, that is owed that child support. But it's a tricky situation when a parent is in arrears and goes to jail, because then how do they continue to pay that child support?
Well, generally, for child support, they don't give you a bill. They want the money, and any money that you pay them will go towards that back child support. Unfortunately, we're not able to bail people out that are in there on a child support hold. It's called the FOC hold, friend of the court. They usually don't have a bill. They're usually trying to get the money out of these people.
Bail would cover that back child support, though, right?
Yes and no. Like Earl said, that's kind of a tricky situation. So if you do, what they say is, if you do pay that bond or that bail, then it's supposed to go to the friend of the court to help get you out of the arrears. But don't forget, you have to pay to stay. You have to pay court fees, because now you have to see a judge and prosecutor and all that other stuff. So all that money that you pay for bond does not go there. And if you can't pay, they will keep you incarcerated until you basically acquired that amount of money that you might owe for this bond. So if it's $2,000, they're going to have you stay in jail for how many days $2,000 equals out to. But that's also not helpful, because how are they going to go to work to pay their child support if they're incarcerated for 30 days, 60 days? My brother was one of those folks, and that's one of the reasons why he was consistently incarcerated, even though he had custody of his daughter for her whole life. Still on child support, still had to pay, and he had to stay upwards to 90 days until they decided he served his time to release him, but he still also had to pay that money back and pay to stay.
My question is part of your platform to remove the bail from those instances as well? When you say no cash bail?
I think we'd love to talk to you about it. We'd love to talk to you.
Right.
And I think we'd love to have a conversation with you about it, because our agenda is created from conversations like this. We don't phone up an expert up in Lance and say, tell us what to do, right? And I'll also say, we just don't believe incarceration is the answer for having the inability to pay. Flat out.
Right.
Flat out. That's our board stance. So it's an area of maybe of growth for us.
Okay. Your question?
You have an attorney on your staff?
Do we have an attorney? We are in coalition with several attorneys. As a matter of fact, you heard her speak about when we were bailing people out during the protests. Well, I was working with the NLC, NLA, which is the National Lawyers Association, National Lawyers Guild, and a few other lawyer organizations that were volunteering their time. And we connected all of the people that were arrested with attorneys and whatnot. And we have attorneys that work with us because they also believe that we do, that cash bail is not the answer.
Can I go?
Yep. Okay.
We're organizers. We're organizers, right? We need lawyers. We need teachers. We need care workers, but we are organizers. That's how we believe we do this change, right? But I will say, Earl and I, we had the privilege of looking for a plaintiff for a lawsuit during when COVID happened. I didn't get a chance to talk about this. When COVID happened, we did not stop organizing. We did not say, what do we do now? We just kept organizing, and we found plaintiffs in Oakland County Jail, and we had the only successful federal lawsuit to hold Sheriff Bouchard in contempt for the conditions in Oakland County Jail. It was a federal lawsuit.
And they released over 50% of the...
Right, and we were on the phone with the ACLU and the Advancement Project and folks every night, right? So I think to answer we need movement attorneys. We need attorneys that believe in this, but we organize. So I think it's a great question, but sometimes that gets lost in the mix. Yeah, we gotta go.
So the last thing that I just want to say, if you all are interested, here is our agenda. Q has some over here. This is the first one that we made. And number 3 is the prelude to the agenda that's currently in design for care, not criminalization. So be on the lookout for that stuff.
Thank you. We'd like to thank everybody from Michigan Liberation. And one thing I'd like to address that Anthony talked about, if this override millage doesn't pass in Huron Valley. Last year with some extra money they got from the state and federal government, they were able to put a social worker in every elementary school in Huron Valley, which has never happened before. We've had maybe a quarter-time social worker. Now we have a full-time social worker in every elementary school to get those kids help before they move up, before they get in trouble. And if this doesn't pass, those kind of things are going to get cut. And we don't want to see that happen.
And I just want to push and promote the postcards in the yellow folders that we were given, and the idea of writing these and getting these sent out. I think it's really key because this is the action. It's a small one, but it's a start. And so we'll talk in the future about things that we can do to support this campaign and work with Michigan a little bit. Pardon me?
We have a link on our website.
We have a link on our website connected to Michigan Liberation that you can look at. You can make donations. And also, I'm really seriously thinking we should organize a group to go to your action on the 27th. So we should probably get together for that because that would be good to do. Okay? Thanks, everybody. Be safe.